I died on a Thursday. Not that anyone noticed, of course. My parents were too busy clinking champagne glasses at Camilla's latest triumph, some overpriced charity gala where she'd done nothing but smile and cut a ribbon. Meanwhile, I was lying in a hospital bed 3 miles away, bleeding out from a car crash no one had even asked about. The nurses kept glancing at the door, waiting for my family to show up. I stopped waiting hours ago. The monitor beeped, slow and uneven, like a countdown. My phone buzzed on the tray table, another text from my mother. "Camilla's event is running late, sweetie. We'll try to stop by after." I didn't bother replying. I already knew how this ended. They wouldn't come. They never did. The pain was fading, which was funny because you'd think dying would hurt more. But no, it was just cold and quiet. The kind of quiet that settles when you finally stop hoping. I thought about all the birthdays they'd forgotten, the awards they'd missed, the way they'd sigh when I walked into a room like I was interrupting something important. I wondered if they'd even cry at my funeral. Or would Camilla have a ballet recital that day too? The last thing I heard was the nurse whispering to the doctor, "No family yet." And then, nothing. Then I woke up, not in some bright, heavenly void, not in hell, though that might have been fitting. No, I woke up in my old bedroom on my 18th birthday, the sheets sticky with summer heat and the sound of laughter drifting up from downstairs. For a second, I thought it was a dream. But then I heard my mother's voice, bright and false, gushing about how Camilla's recital is going to be spectacular this year. And I knew. I'd been here before. I sat up slowly, my hands shaking, not from fear, but from something darker. Recognition. The universe had spat me back to this moment, this exact crossroads, like it was testing me. Do it better this time, it seemed to whisper. Do it differently. I looked at the calendar on my desk, the date circled in red, my birthday, ignored as always. Downstairs, a car door slammed. They were leaving. Again. This time, I didn't run after them. I didn't beg. I just watched through the window as the taillights disappeared down the street. And then I got to work. The air smelled like cheap lavender detergent and the lingering scent of Camilla's vanilla perfume. Always too sweet. Always suffocating. My fingers dug into the windowsill as I watched the car turn the corner, taking my family with it. The house settled into silence, that heavy, hollow kind that comes when you realise you're truly alone. I should have been crying. That's what I did last time. Collapsed onto my bed, screamed into my pillow, let the anger dissolve into pathetic sobs. But now I just felt numb. The kind of numbness that comes after a storm, when the wreckage is all that's left and you're too tired to care. I turned away from the window and caught my reflection in the mirror. 18 again. No scars from the crash. No shadows under my eyes from years of begging for love that never came. Just a girl in a too small room with a too big secret. I knew how this story ended, and I refused to live it twice. The bed creaked as I sat down, my fingers tracing the faded quilt my grandmother had made me before she died. The only person who ever remembered my birthday without being reminded. Last life, I'd left it behind when I ran. This time, I folded it neatly and stuffed it into my bag. Downstairs, the remnants of breakfast sat untouched. My chair was conspicuously empty, placemat clean, like they'd never expected me to join them. A half-empty coffee cup bore Camilla's lipstick stain. I poured it down the sink, watching the brown liquid swirl away like the past I was about to erase. The safe in my father's office was laughably easy to crack. His birthday, Camilla's birthday, their anniversary. Predictable. The stack of documents inside was thicker than I remembered, and for a second my hands faltered. But then I saw it. The college fund they'd opened in my name and promptly forgot about. 6 figures, untouched. Meant as a tax write-off, probably. Or maybe they'd planned to gift it to Camilla later. The cheque was in my pocket before I could second-guess it. The front door didn't creak when I opened it. No dramatic pause, no looking back, just me, a backpack, and the first real decision I'd ever made for myself. The sun was too bright, the world was too loud, and for the first time in either of my lives, I was exactly where I was supposed to be, nowhere near them. The piano music floated through the open windows of the school auditorium, a halting, off-key rendition of Chopsticks that somehow earned thunderous applause. I stood in the shadows of the parking lot, watching through the glass as my parents leapt to their feet, my mother dabbing at fake tears, my father clapping like Camilla had just performed at Carnegie Hall. I hadn't meant to come, but some masochistic part of me needed to see it one last time, needed the proof that nothing had changed, that I was still the ghost in their perfect family portrait. Camilla took her bow, cheeks flushed with triumph, and my parents rushed forward to shower her with roses. The bouquet was massive, obnoxious, the kind meant for prima ballerinas and opera stars. I wondered if they even remembered what day it was. Then my mother turned, scanning the crowd with that practiced socialite smile. And for one heart-stopping second, our eyes met through the window. Her expression didn't change. No flicker of recognition, no guilt, just blankness, like she had glimpsed a stranger before turning back to her golden child. The roses were probably more expensive than my last birthday gift. The thought should have hurt. Instead, it crystallized something inside me, a final, unshakable truth. They would never see me. Not really. I turned away as the applause swelled again, the sound chasing me across the asphalt. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A calendar notification. Happy birthday, it chirped, the exclamation point almost mocking. I swiped it away and kept walking. The bus stop was empty. The night air smelled like gasoline and impending rain. And when the number 14 pulled up with its flickering interior lights, I stepped on without looking back. The doors hissed shut behind me, sealing away more than just a street corner. This time, I wouldn't wait for them to remember. This time, I'd make sure they never forgot. The bus smelled like stale cigarettes and industrial cleaner, the vinyl seat sticking to my thighs as we lurched away from the curb. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass, watching streetlights smear into golden streaks through the gathering rain. Each passing block felt like shedding skin. The school, the bakery where we'd never shared a Saturday morning pastry, the boutique where Camilla's debutante dress still sat in the window. My fingers found the check in my pocket, crisp edges biting into my palm. The bank would open at 9. Until then, I had 12 hours and $63 in crumpled bills to disappear. The motel on 7th Street took cash and didn't ask questions. The clerk barely looked up from his racing form as I slid exact change across the counter. Room 214 had a broken AC unit dripping onto stained carpet, but the deadbolt worked. I dropped my bag on the bed and peeled off my sweater, still faintly scented with Camilla's jasmine detergent. The shower ran rust brown before clearing. I stood under the scalding water until my skin turned red, washing away the last traces of that house, their voices, the way my father had glanced right through me at dinner last week when I mentioned my science fair win. Toweling off, I caught my reflection in the fogged mirror, a stranger with sharp eyes and no apologies left. Outside, thunder rumbled as I unfolded the quilt over the scratchy motel blanket. The fabric still smelled like Grandma's lavender sachets. I plugged in the ancient alarm clock, set it for 8:15, and lay down on sheets that smelled like bleach and other people's loneliness. The rain picked up, hammering against the window like it wanted in. For the first time in 18 years, I slept through the night. No whispered arguments downstairs. No Camilla practicing scales at midnight. Just silence and the distant wail of a train whistle, calling me somewhere else. The neon sign outside my window flickered. A broken, vacancy bleeding pink light across the ceiling. Every time the V sputtered out, the room plunged into near darkness before resurrecting in that sickly glow. I counted the intervals between failures like a morbid heartbeat. 7 seconds, 12, 3. A truck rumbled by on the wet pavement below, its headlights sweeping across the peeling wallpaper in a slow arc. The shadows revealed water stains, shaped like continents I'd never visited. Somewhere between Australia and Antarctica, a cockroach scuttled along the baseboard. I watched it disappear behind the dresser with detached fascination. The ice machine down the hall groaned to life with a sound like dying machinery. I flinched at the sudden noise, then laughed at myself. A dry, humorless sound swallowed by the musty air. My fingers traced the raised stitching on Grandma's quilt, following the familiar patterns she'd sewn, while telling me stories about her girlhood in Shanghai. The fabric felt like the only real thing in this liminal space between lives. A siren wailed in the distance, fading as it moved uptown. I imagined it racing towards some catastrophe more urgent than my quiet unravelling. The pillowcase smelled faintly of cigarette smoke and cheap detergent. I turned it over, seeking a cooler side, but the heat clung stubbornly to everything. Dawn crept in grey and tentative through the thin curtains. The neon sign finally gave up its ghost as sunlight diluted the night. Somewhere beyond these walls, my family would be waking to another ordinary day, their world undisturbed by absence. I sat up, rubbing the grit from my eyes, and reached for the plastic-wrapped motel cup. The first sip of tepid water tasted like freedom and loneliness in equal measure. The clock radio blinked 6:17 in angry red numerals. My new life had officially begun. The diner smelled of burnt coffee and yesterday's grease, the kind of place where the vinyl booths stuck to your thighs in summer and the waitresses called everyone hun, with varying degrees of sincerity. My third double shift this week, and my feet already ached through the cheap, non-slip shoes. But the cash in my apron pocket, creased singles, and the occasional 5 meant I wouldn't starve. I wiped down table 7 for the 5th time, watching the elderly regular nurse his black coffee like it held the secrets of the universe. The night before, I'd spent 4 hours hunched over my laptop in the motel room, teaching myself to code between stolen bites of a stale muffin. The screen's glow had been the only light, my fingers stumbling through lines of Python like a child learning to walk. "Order up!" The cook's bark snapped me back. I balanced 3 plates up my arm, eggs over easy, a stack of pancakes, a side of bacon extra crispy, and delivered them with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. The customer didn't look up from his phone. By closing, my fingertips were raw from scrubbing the grill, the chemical tang of industrial cleaner clinging to my skin. I counted my tips under the flickering fluorescence in the back alley. $47. Enough for another night at the motel, plus ramen and a notebook from the dollar store. The bus ride home was empty save for a graveyard shift worker snoring in the back. I pressed my forehead to the window, watching my breath fog the glass. The city lights blurred into streaks. Not tears, just exhaustion. Back in room 214, I cracked open the notebook and sketched wireframes until my vision doubled. The app would work this time. It had to. Sleep came in fitful bursts, my dreams full of lines of code that unravelled like yarn. When the alarm screeched at 5 a.m, I rose with the certainty of someone with nothing to lose and everything to prove. The diner would open in an hour. My shift started at 7. But so did the rest of my life. The notification pinged at 3:17 a.m, a sound I'd conditioned myself to wake for. I fumbled for my phone in the dark, the cracked screen illuminating my face as the email loaded. My breath caught. "Congratulations! Your proposal has been selected for development." The words didn't change, no matter how many times I blinked at them. Some tech incubator in the city had taken a chance on my scheduling app, the one I'd cobbled together between shifts, the one that had eaten up 6 months of sleepless nights and instant noodles, the one that worked. I sat up too fast, the air mattress groaning beneath me. My current apartment was a glorified storage room above a laundromat, rented for cash from a landlord who didn't ask questions. The walls vibrated with the rumble of dryers even at this hour, but tonight the sound felt like applause. Sunrise found me pacing the length of the room, all 8 steps, reading the contract fine print until my eyes burned. The advance was modest, but it meant quitting the diner. It meant real groceries. It meant buying a laptop that didn't overheat when I ran 2 programs at once. I dressed carefully for the meeting. Thrift store blazer, the one good blouse I owned, shoes polished with a wet wipe. The bus ride downtown felt different this time. I wasn't invisible anymore. People glanced at my folder of schematics, at the determined set of my jaw. The incubator office smelled like money and ambition. Fresh paint, expensive coffee, the citrusy tang of cleaning products too upscale for my old motel. The investors shook my hand without flinching at my calluses. When the youngest of them, a woman in razor-sharp heels, leaned forward and said, "Walk us through your vision." I didn't stammer. I didn't apologise. I laid out my plans like a general mapping conquest. By noon, the deal was signed. By evening, I was sitting on my fire escape with a box of supermarket sushi, watching pigeons fight over a crust of bread. The taste of spicy tuna on my tongue was sweeter than any birthday cake they'd never bought me. The gallery opening should have been her triumph. Crystal flutes of champagne, critics milling between installations, that giddy moment before the reviews drop. I knew because I saw the Instagram posts, my thumb hovering over each carefully curated image before scrolling past. But the photos told a different story than Camilla's captions suggested. The crowd was thin, the angles too wide, revealing empty spaces where admirers should have clustered. In one shot, our parents stood stiffly beside her latest conceptual piece, a single white canvas with one uneven brushstroke titled Silent Echo. Mother's smile looked painted on. I learned the details from an art blog's scathing review. Winslow's sophomore exhibition fails to justify the hype, derivative to the point of parody. One wonders who exactly these vacant provocations are meant to impress. The comment section was worse. Then came the leaked DM, a screenshot that went viral when some influencer shared it. Camilla's desperate message to a gallery owner: "You promised press coverage my parents donated to your fundraiser last year." The internet dissected it like a lab specimen. Memes sprouted overnight. Our parents' country club friends stopped mentioning her at luncheons. The donations to her artist residency quietly dried up. I imagined the dinner table silences growing heavier, the way their eyes might dart to my empty chair, the placeholder for all their disappointments, now occupied by ghostly expectation. The final blow came via a forwarded email from an old high school classmate. Camilla was waitressing at some farm-to-table bistro in the city. The attached photo showed her in a black apron, caught mid-scowl, while refilling a water glass. I didn't save it, didn't screenshot. Just closed the tab and returned to my blueprints, my real work, the kind that couldn't be bought with family connections or drowned in cheap Pinot Grigio. Somewhere across town, a canvas sat gathering dust. Somewhere, a phone buzzed with unreturned calls. I adjusted my desk lamp and kept working. The interview request landed in my inbox on a Tuesday morning, the sender's name immediately recognizable. The same journalist who'd profiled tech giants and Silicon Valley disruptors. My fingers hesitated over the keyboard before typing a single-word reply. Available. They shot the cover in my office, the photographer fussing with lighting until the glass walls of my startup's headquarters gleamed like ice. Lean forward slightly, he directed, like you're listening for something no one else can hear. The resulting image was sharper than I'd expected. My dark hair pulled back, no makeup to soften the angles of my face, the crisp white collar of my shirt standing stark against the backdrop of code flickering across monitors. "The prodigy who built an empire out of spite," read the headline. The article dissected my company's meteoric rise without ever mentioning the family name I'd abandoned. They called my app revolutionary. My management style ruthlessly efficient. Only one question made me pause during the interview. What keeps you motivated? I'd answered with something polished about innovation, but the truth hummed beneath my skin. Every late night, every patronising smirk from professors who'd said I lacked creative vision, every birthday spent staring at an untouched cake. The issue hit newsstands on a Friday. By noon, my assistant was fielding calls from venture capitalists who'd previously ignored my pitches. At 3 p.m, a courier delivered a heavy cream envelope, the kind with embossed lettering. Inside, an invitation to the Whitmore charity ball, where my parents had chaired the committee for 15 years. I ran my thumb over the gold foil, remembering how they'd never gotten me a +1 to these events, how I'd spent those evenings stranded at banquet tables while Camilla held court. The RSVP card went straight into the shredder. But I marked the date in my calendar anyway. Let them see what they'd failed to notice. The country club whispers started before the ink was dry on the magazine. I heard about it through a former classmate, how my mother had been mid-sip of her mimosa when Mrs. Kensington slid the Forbes issue across the linen tablecloth with a saccharine. "Darling, isn't this your daughter?" The crystal flute had slipped from her fingers, shattering against the patio tiles. My father's first attempt at contact came via LinkedIn, of all places, a connection request with a message that reeked of corporate speak. "Impressive growth trajectory, let's discuss synergies." I deleted it without responding, but not before screenshotting it to my team, who howled with laughter over their lattes. Then the flowers arrived at my office. Peonies, Camilla's favourite, not mine, with a card signed Mom and Dad in that looping script I'd seen on every permission slip they'd forgotten to sign. The receptionist raised an eyebrow when I told her to donate them to the cleaning staff. Their desperation took on new forms each week. A cousin happened to be in my neighbourhood. My college alumni magazine suddenly featured their generous donation to a scholarship fund. One established the same month my face appeared on national newsstands. The final act came via text, 3 words that would have shattered me years ago. "We're so proud." I stared at the glowing screen in my darkened penthouse, the city lights sprawling below like a circuit board. The anger I expected never came. Just a quiet exhaustion, the kind that follows a storm when the damage is already done. They didn't want me. They wanted the reflection of success I now carried, the bragging rights they could parade at cocktail parties. I blocked the number and poured myself a drink, watching the ice cubes melt into something unrecognisable. Outside, a limousine idled at the building's entrance, waiting to take me to the Whitmore ball. Let them see how well their invisible daughter had done. A certified letter arrived on a rainy Thursday, the kind requiring my signature. The return address, my childhood home, stood out like a bruise against the plain manila envelope. My assistant hovered nervously as I slit it open with a letter opener, revealing embossed stationery that smelled faintly of my mother's gardenia perfume. "Dearest," it began, the word curling across the page in her perfect penmanship. "Your father and I were hoping we might arrange a private dinner. There's so much to celebrate, and so much left unsaid." The paper trembled in my hands, not from emotion, but from the sheer audacity. They'd typed the date, time, and location. The Laurent, that absurdly expensive French restaurant where Camilla had celebrated her high school graduation, where I'd sat forgotten at the end of the table, picking at an overcooked steak while they toasted her bright future. I nearly tossed it straight into the shredder. Instead, I framed it, hung it right beside my desk where every investor could see it during meetings. A modern art piece titled 18 Years Too Late, in sleek metal lettering beneath the glass. The team thought it was hilarious. The journalists who came through assumed it was some tech world inside joke. But when my CO asked why I kept it, I just smiled and said, accountability. The RSVP deadline came and went without acknowledgement. Let them sit at that linen-draped table, watching the door, jumping every time the maitre d' approached. Let them taste the expensive wine they'd ordered, just in case, growing more bitter with each passing minute. The restaurant charged no-shows a cancellation fee, I knew. Small victories. The Whitmore Hotel's grand ballroom glittered like a gilded cage, all crystal chandeliers and marble floors polished to a cruel shine. I paused at the top of the staircase, letting the murmurs ripple outward, first from the publicists recognizing my face from magazine covers, then the socialites whispering behind their champagne flutes. My dress was black, of course. Not the demure little number my mother would have chosen, something appropriate that blended into the wallpaper, but a razor-sharp column of silk with a neckline that plunged like a dare. The security team at the door had checked my invitation twice, unable to reconcile the name with the woman standing before them. Halfway across the room, I saw my mother's spine stiffen. My father's hand froze mid-gesture, his martini glass tilting dangerously. Camilla, draped in some unfortunate tulle concoction, actually took a step backward, as if I might vanish if she blinked hard enough. I accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and made my rounds, shaking hands with board members who'd once dismissed me, exchanging air kisses with philanthropists who now tripped over themselves to introduce their sons, all while keeping one eye on my family's slow, inevitable approach, like ships dragged towards a whirlpool. When they finally intercepted me near the ice sculpture, my mother's perfume hit first, that same cloying gardenia scent from the letter. Up close, I could see the cracks in her composure, the over-bright smile, the nervous flutter at her throat where her pearls sat too tight. "Darling," she breathed, reaching for my elbow. I sidestepped smoothly, raising my glass in salute as a reporter called my name from across the room. "Excuse me," I murmured. "Press obligations." The flashbulbs erupted as I walked away, leaving them stranded in the glare of my spotlight. They cornered me on the terrace, where the cold November air bit through silk and pretense alike. My father's hand gripped my wrist, not roughly, but with the desperation of a man clutching a lifeline. The city lights stretched below us, indifferent to the scene playing out above them. "We miss you," my mother said, the words fraying at the edges. A rehearsed line delivered too late to matter. Her diamond earrings caught the moonlight as she tilted her head, waiting for me to soften. I studied them, really studied them, for the first time in years. The silver threading through my father's temples that hadn't been there when I left. The way my mother's signature red lipstick bled slightly into the fine lines around her mouth. Time had etched its marks while they weren't looking, while they'd been too busy chasing Camilla's fading spotlight to notice their own reflection in the mirror. Camilla herself hovered a few steps back, arms crossed over that ridiculous dress. She'd lost weight. The hollows beneath her cheekbones made her look older than 25. I slid my wrist free and reached into my clutch, extracting a business card. The embossed letters gleamed under the terrace lights as I pressed it into my father's palm. "My assistant's email," I said, "if you'd like to discuss a donation to the foundation." The silence that followed was almost comical. Somewhere inside, the orchestra struck up a waltz. My mother's mouth opened, then closed. I watched the realization crash over her. There would be no tearful reunion, no absolution. Just this, a transaction, as impersonal as the checks they'd written to make up for forgotten birthdays. I adjusted my shawl and turned toward the ballroom doors. "Wait!" Camilla's voice cracked across the terrace. I didn't. The click of my heels on marble echoed like a countdown as I walked away. Not in anger, not in pain, but with the quiet finality of a door locking shut. 5 springs later, my foundation's gala outshines the Whitmore Ball in both attendance and media coverage. The venue glows with minimalist elegance. No gilded chandeliers or overwrought centerpieces, just clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the city skyline. My chief of staff hands me a glass of sparkling water as we review the evening's program. her tablet displaying a real-time donation ticker climbing towards 7 figures. A commotion at the entrance draws my attention. Camilla stands frozen in the doorway, clutching an invitation she clearly bought at auction, her dated designer gown swallowing her thin frame. Our eyes meet across the crowded room. She looks startled, as if some part of her still expected to find the girl who once shared her bathroom, who folded her laundry when the maid was off. I nod to security, not to remove her, but to ensure she's escorted to her proper seat. Not at the founders' table where my team laughs over shared memories of our early struggles, but among the minor donors in the back. Let her see what real success looks like. Let her watch as universities compete for my scholarship recipients, as politicians court my endorsement, as the world bends toward people who build rather than beg. Later, when the auctioneer announces the final lot, a mentorship lunch with me, the bidding war erupts among tech executives. I sip my water and watch the numbers soar, thinking of a diner's sticky countertops, of motel alarm clocks, of the weight of a check in my pocket that started it all. The gavel falls at $250,000. The crowd applauds. Outside, the first cherry blossoms of the season drift past the windows like forgotten birthday confetti. I smile, and this time it reaches my eyes.